welcome to the 9 News Business Buzz, where we take up what's happening in business, how it impacts you and our economy. I'm Ryan Frazier, 9 News business expert and CEO of Frazier Global. I'm joined by Ed Seelover of the Colorado Chamber of Commerce and the editor of the Sum and Substance. Ed, how's it going?
It's going great. Sum and Substance has been extra busy. TSScolorado.com to check out what I've been writing.
Ed, our first topic is a major new proposal that could fundamentally change how Colorado taxpayers and businesses are taxed. Now, there's a new coalition pushing a ballot initiative to replace Colorado's 4.4% flat income tax with a new graduated system. The proposal would give tax breaks to individuals and businesses earning under $500,000, but would significantly increase rates on higher earners, sparking a major debate about fairness and the economic impact. Now, Colorado's flat tax is a core part of its financial identity. The proposal would change that by creating a graduated system that ranges from 4.2% to 9.2%, according to your reporting, Ed. Can you break down the numbers in this proposal and who are the biggest winners and losers?
Well, I think to understand the real answer to that question, you have to start with why the Bell Policy Center is pushing this. The idea that they have here is that they feel like it's an unfair tax system. They want to make people who make more pay a little bit more, and they also want to stabilize the funding for state services ranging from education to health services that have been cut repeatedly in the last 2 years because of budget balancing maneuvers. So they say the reason to do this, the winners here are going to be anybody who gets state services. But if you just break down the numbers, as you were asking about, $500,000 is the dividing line here. If you are an individual or business making less than that, your tax rate will either go down or stay stable. And the way that they will calculate the tax rate means you will have to pay less taxes, as much as $200 in less taxes for people making between $200,000 and $500,000. Over $500,000, though, you're paying more, and it gets to be significantly more after a while. If you make over $2 million a year, you could be paying $20,000 a year more in these taxes. So that's kind of how it breaks down to winners and losers for businesses and individuals.
Yeah, now, supporters like the Bell Policy Center argue that this fixes an upside-down tax code to fund state services. You can read some of the statements that the proponents had to say on your screen. But opponents like Advance Colorado say this is just a massive tax hike in disguise. Again, read the opposing arguments here on your screen. But what are some of the core economics that are at debate here?
I think some of the core economics that are at debate here is, for Advanced Colorado, for example, let's take this issue. They say you could change the state's tax system. You could make a graduated tax system without actually raising the $2.4 billion to $3.25 billion in tax income that this is expected to raise every year. They say you could make some of these rates lower. It could be a revenue neutral proposal, but that's not what the Bell Policy Center wants to do. They want to raise taxes here. The Bell Policy Center, meanwhile, says, look, we've had to go through these cycles of cutting things. The other thing that this measure would do is that it would actually exempt all the new money from the state's taxpayer Bill of Rights revenue cap. That's the cap that's set every year, and any amount that comes in above that is refunded to taxpayers through income tax refunds. This would say, no, the state gets to keep anything that comes in through this, and the state gets to spend that on the services that we think are so important right here.
Now, this proposal applies to both individuals and businesses. How would this shift impact small business owners who file as pass-through entities, and what's the risk of high-earner entrepreneurs or businesses potentially even leaving the state?
Well, I mean, the business question is a good one because business income is a little easier to reach in some levels than personal income. Saying you're going to put a tax on millionaires is one thing. That's a pretty popular idea. But a business making $1 million a year in revenue, it's actually not that hard to get there. And especially for LLCs, sole proprietorships, and S-corps, these are what are called pass-through entities. And those business owners report their income as the revenue that's made by the company. Not the gross revenue, but the net revenue. So you're saying, okay, you're hitting these levels where your taxes are going up even quicker, and that doesn't even count what you're already paying in expenses for the business that's included in the revenue you are reporting as the revenue there. So to answer your question, for smaller businesses, this is going to make things tougher. This is going to cut back on what they can do. Maybe it'll cut back on their hiring, and that's why they are worried about this question, even as the Bell is saying, look, they're going to get the help they need with state services.
Yeah, you know, as a small business owner myself, right, I start to think think about, how this would affect people like me, right? And, is it fair to say that, for a small business owner, if you earn more in revenue, gross revenue, you should be forced to pay higher taxes under this proposal as well? I think that's one of the fundamental questions here. When I look at from your report at the Sum and Substance, Ed, I look at the breakdown of the numbers. It's not that significant of a tax cut, at least in raw numbers, right? The data shows this is a clear shift in tax burden. The biggest expected annual tax rate is only $200, and I don't want to make light of $200. It's $200, and it's grocery bill for those. But for those who are making $200,000 to $500,000, that's the biggest tax break that you get. But the biggest expected tax hike are for those making $1 million to $2 million, and that can get from $7,000 upwards of $20,000. So is this really about making the system fair? Or is it just really like we need more money to pay for services?
And it's a good question. The Bell Policy Center said, look, our goal here is to make the system fair, and the tax revenue we're bringing in is incidental. Critics say that's not the case at all. You've been talking about the need for more services, and that's why you're doing this. And I think it's really interesting to see that if you are below $500,000 a year, you could go down just as low as 4.2% for your income tax rate. But if you're hitting $10 million a year or more, and again, for corporations, that's a lot easier bar to hit. You're paying 9.2% under this proposal beginning in 2027. So I think it's really going to be up to the voters to decide, is this fair?
Well, speaking of it being up to the voters, Ed, now your report highlights this proposal just had a key hearing, but it's just kind of an idea that's moving through the process now. I know there were some hiccups along the way. What's the next step for this initiative to make the ballot in 2026, and what are you hearing from the broader business community so far?
Well, the title setting board ruled last week that this does not have a single subject. And under Colorado law, you have to have a single subject to get onto the ballot. So the proponents are going to have to go back and figure out a way to do this. There were several concerns about the subject, one being both that you are changing the tax system from a flat tax to a graduated tax system, but also that you're doing that while you're asking voters that the state can keep all of the money that's coming in from that. Some of the title board members said that can't be done. There's also a clause in here that would actually get rid of the state's prohibition against surcharges on income taxes. Supporters say, look, we can't remove that clause because of the way things are written without removing some of these other things. But they've got to come back with a single subject title, and then we'll talk about moving forward.
Man, so much to discuss here. Ed, we need to run. This could turn out to be a major battle over Colorado's tax structure with significant implications for every taxpayer and business in the state. The Business Buzz is back during the 11 a.m. hour. We will unpack another big ballot measure, a new proposal to fund Colorado's roads. For the 9 News Business Buzz, for Ed Sealover, I'm Ryan Frazier. Till next time.